Molt bona tarda, molt benvingudes i benvinguts al Palau Macaya de la Fundació La Caixa. Una salutació especial abans de començar aquest acte del senyor Sergi Lugni, que és el nostre director general adjunt, i vaig dient per ordre, el senyor Àngel Font, director general, el senyor Joan Rosás, cap de l'oficina de Representació de Washington, el senyor Wook Jin, el senyor Julien Pellaux, el senyor Fernando i a tots vosaltres, molt benvinguts al Palau Macaya. Avui ens hem reunit aquí per tornar a parlar de filantropia. La setmana passada, en un acte amb la directora de Filea, en parlàvem i avui hi continuem, però avui des d'una altra mirada. L'esdeveniment d'avui ha estat organitzat per l'Oficina de Representació de la Fundació La Caixa a Washington i l'equip del Palau Macaya amb l'objectiu d'enfortir la cooperació entre les Nacions Unides i la filantropia global. Com ja vostès saben, la Fundació La Caixa és una entitat de més de 120 anys d'història i amb aquests 120 anys fonamentalment el que fem és recolzar a les persones, sobretot aquelles que són més vulnerables. Actualment estem dins de les 10 primeres fundacions a nivell mundial. Aquí en el Palau Macaya el que fem fonamentalment és crear espais de reflexió conjunta entre tot tipus d'entitats i part de la societat civil, justament per debatre sobre els temes de major relleu que té a l'actualitat. I un d'ells, i en el context que ens trobem avui en dia, és l'estat actual de la filantropia i cap on ha d'anar. En aquest context, avui tenim el privilegi de comptar amb la participació de destacats experts que representen entitats de renom com ECOSOC, que és una agència de les Nacions Unides, UNESCO, recordeu que el Palau Macaya és un centre UNESCO, des de la cooperació espanyola d'AECIT i, òbviament, l'Organització Europea de Fundacions, que és Filea. En definitiva, la conferència d'avui és una oportunitat única per reflexionar sobre, com deia abans, el paper de la filantropia i el sistema multilateral en aquest nou ordre geopolític. I en un món en cada vegada que està més interconnectat i que és més complexa, pensem que la col·laboració entre les institucions multilaterals i les organitzacions filantròpiques són essencials, aquestes col·laboracions, justament per fer front a aquests desafiaments globals i promoure un desenvolupament equitatiu i sostenible. Feta aquesta presentació, una mica us explico la seqüència de l'activitat d'avui. Tot seguit presentaré el senyor Wook Jin Chang, que ens farà la presentació, farà una presentació d'uns 15-20 minuts sobre justament què fa ECOSOC, i tot seguit farem una taula rodona, un diàleg, i després del diàleg sereu convidats i convidades, si us ve de gust, a formular preguntes. I us prometem que més enllà de les 8 haurem acabat, i si convé abans. Doncs molt bé, tot seguit presento el senyor Wook Jin Chang, que obrirà aquesta jornada amb una presentació, com deia, sobre el paper de les Nacions Unides i ECOSOC. Només unes breus pinzellades. El senyor Wook Jin és el director de les organitzacions no governamentals d'aquest Consell Econòmic i Social de les Nacions Unides, amb les sigles ECOSOC. Ell és diplomàtic de carrera, ha tingut diferents posicions, ha treballat a l'ambaixada de Corea de Washington, de Costa Rica, d'Aràbia Saudita, i també, dins de la seva dilatada carrera, el senyor Chang va ser assistent especial i cap de l'oficina del exsecretari general de les Nacions Unides, el senyor Ban Ki-moon. Res més, segur que serà tot molt inspirador, i tot seguit dono la paraula al senyor Wook Jin Chang. It's an honor to invite Mr. Wook Jin to the stage, please. Thank you.
Buenas nit, buenas noches. Gracias por la cordial presentación. Em dic Wook Jin Chang y soy el cap de la división de ONG de las Naciones Unidas. That's all I can say. And it is a great honor to be here today at Palau Macaya to share information about the United Nations and Economic and Social Council, where I'm working, and the partnership between the United Nations and the NGOs and civil society. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the leadership of the La Caixa Foundation for successfully arranging my visit, as well as meetings with many leading NGOs in Madrid and Barcelona. And I especially thank my good friend Joan Rosás and Jorge and Irene, who made this all possible. Over the years, I had the privilege of working with many outstanding Spanish individuals. First, Cristina Gayac, proud daughter of Barcelona, who served as the Undersecretary General for Communication, and later as the Spain's the Secretary of State for the 2030 Agenda. And Mr. Miguel Ángel Moratinos, now the High Representative for the UN's Alliance for Civilization and former the Foreign Minister. And most of the memorable experiences were while I was working for Mr. Ban Ki-moon. I had the honor to be with many meetings with His Majesty King Felipe VI, with my former boss. And all of this was possible because I had an honor to work for Mr. Ban Ki-moon when he was the Secretary General. And these leaders from Spain underscored the country's strong commitment to multilateralism, human rights, and global partnership. Now let me start with the first chapter, which is the United Nations. As you all know, the United Nations was born from the ashes of the two world wars. Together, those conflicts claimed over 90 million lives. Considering that population of Spain today is around 48 million, and my home country, Korea, is about 45 to 46, imagine every single person in both Korea was gone. It is an unimaginable toll that devastated not only nations, but also humanity's collective conscience, economies, societies, and the very fabric of the human dignity. In response to this the destruction, 51 countries came together in 1945, exactly 80 years ago, to form a global organization with a solemn mission to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war. The United Nations was envisioned as a guardian of the world after the world wars, and the founding fathers of the United Nations set the mission on these three core pillars, which is first, peace and security, development, and human rights. And these the pillars guide our efforts to address conflict, poverty, inequality, and injustice worldwide. To carry out this mission, the UN Charter established 6 main organs, which is the General Assembly, the main deliberative body at the beginning it was the 51, but now we have 193 member countries. And of course, Security Council in charge of maintaining international peace, and Economic and Social Council, ECOSOC, where I'm working, coordinating development, human rights, and other policy. and which is of the Trusteeship Council, once vital for of the decolonization, and International Court of Justice, the UN's legal arm which is in The Hague. And finally, the Secretariat, which is support the work of the organization. For the past 80 years, the organization has expanded in size and complexity. As you can see now in this organigram, it is now multiplied into many different organizations. And ECOSOC is one of the most dynamic bodies, playing a critical role in shaping global development policy. And if you look at the chart here, the blue section representing the work of the ECOSOC and its affiliated bodies, and it grew the most. Spain joined the United Nations, as you know, 10 years after the creation of the United Nations in 1955. Since that, it has played a vital role in promoting multilateralism and exercised its key role in the United Nations. Today, Spain hosts the World Tour of the Tourism Organization in Madrid, and also the UN logistical base in Valencia, and continues to lead in setting many important agendas, including education, gender equality, together with ASCID and the La Caixa Foundation. It continues to the work on the peacekeeping in Lebanon, Mali, and beyond. And I had the honor of attending Spain's 60th anniversary in 2015 with Secretary General Ban Ki-moon and Their Majesties and the King and Queen of Spain. And this year, I'm pretty much sure Spain will celebrate its 70th anniversary with the United Nations. Now, let us now turn to the ECOSOC. As I briefed you before, the ECOSOC is the UN's principal body for economic, social, and environmental issues. The former Secretary General, Mr. Dag Hammarskjöld, once said, while the Security Council exists to settle conflicts, ECOSOC exists to eliminate the cause of the conflict. In that sense, ECOSOC is about prevention, partnership, and progress. ECOSOC is the central mechanism for coordination and policy review and policy dialogue and recommendations on any issues related to economic and the social affairs. And coordination of the activities of the United Nations system and its specialized agencies and supervision of the subsidiary bodies. And most importantly, its main goal is to work on the Sustainable Development Goal, or SDGs. And as you can see here, like I said, it has functional commissions like narcotic, the drugs, the related social development, and regional commissions in Africa, Europe, Latin America, and Pacific, and Western Asia, and the other key bodies to work on the economic and social issues. ECOSOC it works in a July to July cycle, and this year the most important of the forum is the high-level political forum, and this year's theme is advancing sustainable, inclusive science and evidence-based solution for 2030 agenda and the SDG to leave no one behind. And we still have lots of meeting, the important meeting the remaining, and especially the high-level political forum on sustainable development will be happening on July. While serving for the Secretary General, I saw firsthand the strong relationship between the United Nations and the Kingdom of Spain, not only with the monarchy, but also with the governments and civil society. The UN has been enjoying the incredible support of the royal family, from King Juan and to King Felipe VI and Queen Letitia's humanitarian leadership. And in 2016, the government of Spain conferred the highest honor on the Secretary General in recognition of these strong ties. But today's challenges, SDGs, climate change, humanitarian crisis, cannot be addressed only by the government alone. We definitely need support from NGOs, the private sectors, and academia, especially from philanthropic community. That is why I decided to return to UN from my government on the position in 2022 to serve as the chief of the NGO branch. Having said that, let me finally turn to the relationship between the United Nations and the NGO, my current day-to-day job. Article 71 of the UN Charter allows the ECOSOC, of the Economic and Social Council, to engage with the NGOs. This is so natural today, but it was revolutionary in 1945. NGOs are acting to raise awareness, share expertise, help monitor implementation, and hold institutions accountable. NGOs play essential role with their expertise in all areas you name it, from climate, education, gender equality, the youth, health, everything. They provide in-depth knowledge and expertise, and they give the early warnings and public engagement. Their contributions are indispensable in achieving the SDGs and confronting our global challenges. In 1945, fewer than 50 NGOs, about 45, worked together with the United Nations. But today, there are more than 6,500 NGOs which hold ECOSOC consultative status, which is a powerful indicator of civil society's growing engagement. However, the system is not yet fully inclusive. The top 20 countries account for 66% of all accredited NGOs, starting from the United States and UK. And of course, Spain is among the top 20, but with the ranks of the 15th, however, only with less than 100, which is 82. While talking to many NGOs from Madrid and Barcelona, I realized that there's a huge potential for able and powerful NGOs, the foundations and the association from Spain can play a vital role in global issues together with the United Nations. In this regard, we must expand representation from Spain and the region. I can tell you that it is worse if we look at the regional imbalances. As you can see, in the United Nations, we categorize the countries into 5 regional groups: African states, Asia Pacific, Eastern the European states, Latin American and Caribbean states, Western Europe, and other states, which include the United States. And Western Europe and the other states, it has more than 50% of all 6,500 NGOs. And if you look at it, which is colored in green, Latin American and Caribbean countries, even though it represents 33 members of the 193 members, has only 6% from all 6,500 NGOs, which I think is really unfair, and we need to bridge this gap. And Spanish-speaking nations should and can play a larger role in shaping the UN agenda, and it can be supported by, I think, of the NGOs and philanthropics of the society. Let me wrap up my presentation with one last powerful image, and linking us back to where it began this the presentation, the tragedies of the two World War. One of Spain's most symbolic of the contributions to United Nations is Tapestry of Guernica by Pablo Picasso, displayed outside the Security Council chamber in the United Nations headquarters in New York. This haunting depiction of human suffering serves as a visual moral compass. It reminds us and every delegate, diplomat, and leader who enters the Security Council not to forget the cost of the war and why we must strive every day for peace. I have to tell you that Spain is the great example that shows us how a mid-sized country can have an outsized impact when values aligns with action. And as the Secretary General Antonio Guterres said, let us be united in solidarity and determined in action to build a better world for all. And in this noble endeavor, again, governments alone cannot solve today's crisis and global issues. Civil society, academia, and the private sector they need to work together to reach our target and goals. Muchas gracias, and thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Wook Jin, for your clear, descriptive, comprehensive, and also touching and serious presentation when you mentioned about the conflict and you mentioned about the atrocities of war. You said that the Security Council tries to eliminate conflict, and the ECOSOC tries to eliminate the causes of conflict. Anyway, okay, I think that probably some of you have questions for Wook Jin when nowadays we talk about the UN and the ECOSOC as a body of the UN. That raises a lot of potential questions. But we believe that to leave the questions for the end of the event, okay? So now we're going to go to the second part of this session. We're going to open a round table. So let me ask the speakers, please, if you're so kind to come up. Fernando, Julien, Àngel. Jean, would you like to sit in the second? Yeah, this one here. Okay, we'll do our best to have a vivid, interesting debate, all right? So basically the way we're going to structure the following more or less an hour is we'll begin with a very short presentation by each of you. Maybe yours will be shorter because you already explained about ECOSOC. But the idea is that you talk not really about you, I mean, of course, your name, but about your institution, all right? Your institution. Then, after that, we're going to cover mainly 3 blocks. The first block will be on the strength the achievements of your institutions. We want to be constructive, we want to be optimists, so therefore also you can discuss if you think it's worthwhile weaknesses. We want to focus on the positive aspect. All right, then we're going to go on to the second block. The second block is how your institutions adjust to the current geopolitical situation, geopolitical changes. We'll discuss that. And the third block is how do you think we could encourage cooperation among us in order to accomplish the goal of the United Nations to contribute to make the world a little bit better. So this is it. Then, for the presentation, for your presentation, you have about 2 minutes. All right. Oh my gosh, I just left my cell phone. No, I have it right here. And then for the main blocks, you're going to have about between 4 and 5 minutes. Okay. So if you go beyond that, I will just let you know that you've got to finish. All right? Okay, so that's the idea. And then after the roundtable, please feel free to make all the questions that you would like to make. I think this is a very good opportunity. By the way, I meant to say that what we have here today is the view, okay, the perspective from 2 multilateral institutions, the UN, ECOSOC, and UNESCO, the view of the governments. Fernando represents the Spanish Agency of Cooperation, ICID, so it's part of the Spanish government, and Àngel represents the view of the civil society of the foundations. So we're going to be combining all these 3 views, which I think all of them will come together and see what, we basically what comes up out of the whole conversation. So without further ado, please, Jean, it's your turn, and then we just move, okay?
Oh. Thank you, Joan Rosás. I'm not going to spend 2 minutes because I already spent 30 minutes on the Wook Jin Chang from the United Nations, and I explained more about the United Nations, ECOSOC, and the relationship between the NGOs and the United Nations.
Well, thank you. Hola, buenas noches. My name is Julien Pellaux. I'm the Director of Partnerships for UNESCO. Really happy to be here. Thank you very much for inviting us. So who knows about UNESCO? Okay. Well, you are in a UNESCO place because Palau Macaya is a UNESCO, what we call Category 2 center. UNESCO was created 80 years ago, just like the UN. It's part of the UN. We're in one of the little boxes that Wook Jin showed us, the box of specialized agencies. And UNESCO was created with the mission to build peace in the minds of people. And to build peace in the mind of people through international cooperation on education, sciences, including natural sciences, but also social and human sciences. I mentioned that because the center here is a UNESCO Center for Social Sciences. Culture, of course, and freedom of expression, freedom of ideas, etc. And so really the idea of UNESCO is how we can bring governments together, but also broader partners, we'll talk about it, to find together solutions to the world's most intractable problems through this intellectual cooperation, through norms and standards, and also through activities in countries where we have programs. So very happy to be here.
Perfect. Fernando.
Thank you very much. I'm Director for Financial Cooperation at the Spanish Cooperation Agency. It's an autonomous agency within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. A new law for international cooperation and global solidarity was passed by Congress in 2023. And interestingly enough, with the exception of Vox, every other political party voted for, which means that this is a policy of the state, and was internationally that was very appreciated. So, and second, I think this geopolitical situation is really a challenge for us. We are in the process of having a new structure of the agency, and if I have an opportunity, I will try to explain how do we position ourselves in two aspects. First, how to align philanthropy with development finance, and maybe tell a little about our experience. And second, and very importantly, the Sevilla conference, and how do we want to play the cards so that how do we react vis-a-vis the new geopolitical tsunami. Okay, thank you.
Perfect. I meant to say that Àngel, although is the head of health medical research at La Caixa Foundation, he is not representing La Caixa Foundation in this particular case, because he's the president of the European Philanthropy Association. So therefore, his view will be broad and will be covering all the, let's say, the philanthropy sector in Europe. But Àngel, please go ahead.
Thank you, Joan, and for the introduction. I think philanthropy is a complement that you represent as multilateralism or government. We normally define in short that philanthropy is every single private initiative for the common good. That it's a way to shape. So a lot of people can do philanthropy for themselves, but also we have large structures doing philanthropy, like the Caixa Foundation, let's say. But in Europe, we have almost 200,000 foundations. If we consider Europe, not only the European Union, but the large definition of the continent. So this is a land, and maybe I say this is a city of philanthropy. Probably in this city, one of the ancient foundations that is still working is working here. The origins are based in the 5 or 6 centuries ago. So that idea that with the private initiative we can do something for our citizens, our colleagues, our neighbors, is something that is rooted in our culture. There are different motivations behind that. Probably is humanitarianism is the best one. So this is the reason why we created just 3 years ago a new association that we call it PHILEA, is the Association for Philanthropy in Europe, as the merge of 2 previous organizations, the EFC, European Foundation Center, and Daphne. In EFC, we had 300 foundations. Some people said that it's the larger ones. Of course, the larger are there, but also different sizes are there. And Daphne, that represents 30 national associations of foundations. So now PHILEA is the real voice of philanthropy in Europe, because represents directly 300 foundations, and indirectly probably more than 10,000. No? And allow me just to say a final word in this initial comment. Philanthropy is about women. Probably 70% of the workforce in philanthropy is related to women. And,
not here.
And that was the comment that probably I missed some gender balance here. I'm very sorry for that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Good.
For the joke.
We promise the next one there will be no man. Okay. All right. First block. And remind you that you're going to have about between 4 and 5 minutes. Okay. A lot of people think that we are in a very bad situation. The world is going bad and bad, wrong and wrong. So we are better. We worse off than a few years ago. All right, but you will agree that if we didn't have the UN, if we didn't have UNESCO, if we didn't have government agencies, and if we didn't have philanthropy and private foundations, the world would be worse. The world would be worse. So, having said that, can you explain, the four of you, in 4 or 5 minutes, what are the main achievements, what are the main accomplishments, and if you want to make a reference to also what are the main problems. So please, Jin, go ahead.
First, I'd like to remind you that the UN started 80 years ago to prevent another the World War III. And of course, there are still many regional conflicts here and there, but I can tell you that we haven't had the global World War III, which can devastate the whole world of the development and human rights and everything. And that's the peace and security pillar. And my home country is one of the big example of this accomplishment. We could not, Korea could not, may not exist if there was no UN's support when there was Korean War in 1950. Secondly, of the development of the second pillar of the United Nations, of course, there was, I think, some of the cities in the European countries were totally devastated after the two wars. And Guernica is one of the example. And of course, Korea could flourish because the United Nations and world helped and drive us into development. Human rights, of course, there are multiple of the different agreement, international agreement, to deal with the human rights factors. And after the World War II, like I said, there was the Council for Decolonization, which we called the Trusteeship Council. But it has been inactive since 1994 because most of the countries were successfully independent and working now as the member countries, which made the United Nations more active and flourish. So not only those three pillars, there are many different achievements: cultural, education, and health, and the climate change, and everything. Of course, Joan Rosás said, it is not enough, but it could happen worse if there was no United Nations. The strength of the United Nations, I can tell that it is because of the legitimacy and the support from all member countries and the trust in multilateralism and belief in the United Nations. And also, it was possible because the United Nations has the convening power of and we have all representation from each country. And whenever there's a problem and when there's the big global issues, the UN is the venue for everybody to come and talk. So that's something.
Thank you very much. So Julien, what would you have to add to this statements and this reality?
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, obviously UNESCO is part of the UN, so we contribute also to everything you mentioned, Wook Jin. But I think if we focus more on UNESCO specifically, what I find interesting is that many things that we benefit from in our everyday life have been created at UNESCO or by UNESCO, and we don't even know about it. For example, the copyright sign, the little C in the circle, was created at UNESCO. It's the member states of UNESCO who decided to protect copyright and to create a symbol to do so, and a global policy to do so. The tsunami.
And you registered it.
Yeah, exactly, and we registered it. The tsunami warning system, for example, that is still used today, was invented by UNESCO in the 1960s, for example, and it's still the system that the world uses today to warn countries of upcoming tsunamis. Nuclear research, for example, the CERN, the European Center for Nuclear Research, started as a UNESCO center because UNESCO was promoting scientific cooperation in the area of nuclear research. And what makes UNESCO very different, I think, from many of the other UN agencies is that we have a lot of designations. So I'm sure you all know about the World Heritage Sites, of course, but we also have a lot of other designations. We have, for example, a Convention on Living Heritage, and for example, the Castels, is that how you pronounce them? The human towers, yes, is inscribed on a UNESCO list of living heritage. Or also La Patum de Berga. Yeah. I'm not sure if I pronounced it correctly. It's also inscribed on the UNESCO list of living heritage. And what does that mean? It means that these practices or these places are so important for humanity. They have a universal value that it's not just the responsibility of that particular community, but it's really the responsibility of the entire world, of the entire international community to preserve them and to promote them. And that is a very powerful example of multilateralism, that we share, these are things we share in common as humans across borders, and therefore we need to preserve them and we need to promote them. And there are many other things, the biospheres, the geoparks, we have associated schools, we have, of course, Category 2 centers like this one. So UNESCO has really a lot of networks that are working together to try to promote the mandates not just of UNESCO, but of the United Nations. And more recently, just to show you how multilateralism works, because we like to always say it doesn't work and the governments never agree, but actually at UNESCO, governments agree on a lot of things. And in 2021, before people were even talking about artificial intelligence, the UNESCO member states adopted a recommendation, so a global norm, on the ethics of artificial intelligence. And now we're working in more than 60 countries to transform these norms into local laws and policies on how to make sure that artificial intelligence is used in an ethical way. So these are some very concrete examples, and I can tell you many more, but I'm also looking at your watch. But just maybe to talk briefly about the strength and...
You have time.
I have time, okay. Just to talk a bit about the strengths and weaknesses. I think that these are very much linked. A strength can also be a weakness. So, for example, as Wook Jin mentioned, the universality, the fact that every member state has a seat and every member state has a vote, big and small, it's one vote, is extremely important to build consensus, to promote dialogue, to resolve issues. At the same time, this also sometimes creates blockages. Sometimes it makes things work slowly because it's very difficult to get 193, or at UNESCO we have 194 member states to talk to each other and to agree. So we sometimes spend very long nights in negotiation rooms trying to find consensus, and sometimes we don't find. But that's one, if you like, strength and weakness. I think the other strength and weakness is that the UN has an enormous implementation capacity. We forget, for example, that in humanitarian crisis, there is no other institution, no NGO, no philanthropy that really has the power to make an impact, to immediately bring assistance to affected populations that can be in wars, that can be in natural disasters, like the UN does. And that is a huge strength, but it also creates a lot, sometimes, of inefficiencies that need to be looked at and need to be addressed. And finally, I think another strength that can also be a weakness is the diversity. We have a very diverse UN system, more than 67 UN agencies, funds and programs. You saw the diagram that Wook Jin showed us. It's very rich, and that is a great strength because with this diversity, we get a lot of different expertise. But at the same time, it can also create some duplication, and that is a weakness. And we try to coordinate better, we try to agree on who does what where, but it's complicated. So these are some, I think, of the examples I would bring to answer your question.
Very good, excellent. We intend that after this roundtable, you will leave the room with kind of an inspiring feeling, okay, that the world is not that bad. Anyway, Fernando, it's your turn. What about the government agencies, how they contribute to this?
Okay, I would like, referring really to the title, the papel de las instituciones y de la filantropía. I would like to stress two things. I've been 8 years, I worked many years for an international multilateral bank, but I've been 8 years at the agency. I'm very proud of the dialogue and the evolution of the discussion about where do we want to be internationally as a society. And I would like to focus on two aspects, the social part of this, and I'm afraid to say that we have been very consistent, but we feel like a salmon, you say, el pez, no? Like going against the flow, because now people talk more and more about the interest of the industry and the companies, and without a just and fair transition, there will be no progress. And so, just to give you some numbers that I think, at least for me, are very interesting. After the different crises, COVID, the Ukraine, climate change, etc., the estimates of Addis Abeba about the financing needs to get the ¿cómo se dice? ODS, no? Los SDGs. Of the SDGs have almost tripled, has gone from 2.5 trillion to 5.5 trillion, while the official aid is stuck at around 240 billion. In other words, even if today tomorrow, all countries would, in the so-called developed or industrial world, would have the 0.7% goal, it would be still less than 1/10 of the needs of the emergent economies, only 1/10. So, in other words, we need the private sector. So I want to, if I have some time, to 20 now, I would like to talk a little about how I have seen from my previous experience at the IDB, the Inter-American Development Bank, and now very happy to see, first in a country as Spain, that is probably one of the most decentralized and diverse countries when it comes to international cooperation. You have civil society, comunidades autónomas, universities, foundations. That's fantastic, because at the bottom of it, people care about others. And we're going from a logic of donation. We have to help because we know how to do things, and we're giving you some money, some kind of neocolonialism, almost like a charity, to a logic of partnerships and respect. I think that's the big difference between the Millennium Development Goals and the 2030 Agenda, that problems are too complex. We all have an agenda. Nobody has been able to escape the pandemics, the invasions, the migration, the climate change, etc. So I have seen firsthand how philanthropy, when it comes to the private sector in particular, which is a little my field, has gone from philanthropy, from public feel-good public sector marketing of the companies, to then see a corporate social responsibility, which is interesting because actually companies were created to limit the responsibilities. It's sociedades de responsabilidad limitada. So there is a complete turnabout when even the corporations feel that they have a role and with society. So for many years I was dealing with the guys responsible for ESG, for the annual memory of what they were doing. Now I'm talking to the core of the business. There's a new business model because the shareholders, the consumers, the whole world, the foundations, the family offices, the institutions, the pension funds, they understand that you cannot have successful companies in failed states, and that the problems, that investment in the problems of other countries is the best recipe for our own future. So I have been seeing that, and I wanted for 45 to give you an example. We're working a lot. If you tell me that I'll be able to talk about
30 seconds, so just maybe 1 minute.
Okay, 1 minute. But you took 10 seconds. So anyway, we work a lot on what is called impact investment. And I wanted, because also, frankly, Caixa Bank had a lot to do with Alliance in doing this. We have two incredible investment funds that have been considered as a best practice internationally by the OECD. The last one is Fondo Quali. This is a fund to structure 300 million euros with 33 million from the Green Climate Fund, 50 million from the Spanish agency, but guess what? 215 million euros from small investors, private sector investors, only in Spain, and most of them identified by Caixa Bank. No? With this, we are going to be helping almost 500,000 small farmers to make them have more resilient applications and financing to face really climate change. What is the value added? When I was working for the IDB, they were asking me sometimes, if the project is financially viable, why do you have to support it? And if it's not, why do you support it? So that was like a zero-sum game. And I think the additionality of the public sector is acceleration. We are an honest broker, we connect the dots, and we bring elements and instruments that can, through high-level political dialogue, instruments to de-risk the operations for private investors and to increase their revenue. And that's where I see that we can play a role. Thank you.
Thank you, Fernando, for such a complete. You actually jumped to the third block, which is how we can cooperate. But it's excellent. It's very good. Àngel, so, well, I mean, the private sector, the civil society has to play a major role in all that.
Difficult, but let me say, just to go there in the type of partnership that we can do it, that to explain a little story about when we create Filea, one of the first things was to ask all members about what do you think that your philanthropy institution will devote efforts in the coming years. That was 3 years ago. And the results were interesting because a lot of issues emerged, but the three main pillars in that list, in more than 300 organizations, were climate change, you mentioned before. The second one is inequalities, both internally in Europe, but also elsewhere. And the third one was democracy. Democracy in terms of freedom of expression, allowing to have freedom of press, and all these quality indications of what we consider democracy as a guarantee of our society. We recently did an extra question to our members if we see that during this emergency in the last, or this uncertainty period in the last weeks, and the result is exactly the same. So even in the uncertainty period, these three pillars remain as the main three ones that philanthropy would like to address. Of course, none of the three of them can deal with only one single organization. That's clear. So probably 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when some good group of people would like to start a new organization, probably they were thinking and create something that can solve. But nowadays, probably the challenge that we have as a society probably needs cooperation amongst different actors. That's a reality because the challenges that we face overcome our only capacities probably of a government, probably, as you mentioned, even the multilateralism, and of course the philanthropy. For that reason, we try to add a P of the PPP structure that we call it private-public partnership. We try to now add a fourth P. It's private, philanthropy, public partnership. Why that? Of course, I mentioned that philanthropy is part of the private initiative, but for the common good, so it's a little bit different. Let me say another thing on that. I am chemist by training, and when I was studying chemistry, I was in love in a process that I discovered during my studies that is catalysis, you know.
Yeah.
You have a product here, you have a second type of product there, and you add some dust and reaction comes because it's something magic, you know. And we feel that philanthropy is like that because public sector probably and public, you mentioned big amounts of money. Philanthropy is quite smaller in comparison of the needs that you mentioned. So probably we could be that magical dust that allows the process to react. And think, as you mentioned, Fernando, the risking philanthropy is a new concept, a new trend in our capacity. How we could do things that will be a test that can be escalated by others. Probably, as you mentioned, you have more capacity to escalate a program that has been tested as an efficient one overall. So I really think that different roles in different organizations is important. And maybe an example to that could be in something that all of us, I guess, we have inside our body. That is the COVID vaccine. You probably know that COVID vaccine, initially the research that allows us to have this new technology that is mRNA capacity that was thought initially for cancer, that was the original, but the first research was funded by philanthropy grant. So, but of course afterwards governments, you take also a lead, companies develop the vaccine, and finally multilateral organizations allows to spread vaccines all over the world. So maybe it can be a big example, but very, very important for our life, that philanthropy, private sector, multilateral organizations can work together. And now we are vaccinated of COVID. Thank you.
Wow, it's a lot of stuff. Huh? You mentioned the Quality Fund, right? It's an example of catalysts, because how do you achieve that? 70% of the funds are coming from private investors. So, of course, if it had not been for the governmental agency contributing, and also a multilateral from maybe, I don't know, the European Commission, then the private investor would have not get in. So therefore, that's the issue. That's this COVID vaccine. Angel is that's the key. Okay, that's the response. Okay, we go to the second block. We've talked quite a lot about economics now. We're going to move on more towards the political aspect. And the question that we're going to pose to you is how the current geopolitical changes are affecting philanthropy and particularly your institutions. Just a very few figures. The United States devoted, before the Trump administration, about $68 billion to humanitarian aid. Out of these 68, 40 billion were assigned to U.S. aid. With the U.S. administration, the U.S. aid agency has been eliminated. So therefore, the world, in just one shot, has 40 billion less in humanitarian aid. But it's not only that, but the worst is that other countries are reducing humanitarian aid. Europe, as such, is also reducing and is having substantial cuts. Part of that because of the Ukraine war, the defense budgets have to be increased, but the reality, we were counting that, and some countries are reducing on an annual basis, others on a 5-year basis, but probably it will be about 10 billion or more on an annual basis, the European aid that will be reduced. So therefore, that makes a big change. So what do you think, how we can react, first, particularly your own institutions, and then second, in a global or in a combined way? All right, so you've got 5 minutes. The question is very simple, so therefore I'm sure you'll be able to respond in 5 minutes.
Piece of cake.
So,
Yes.
please go ahead.
First of all, like I said, this year marks 80th anniversary of the United Nations, and I remember the 10 years ago when we were celebrating 70th anniversary of the United Nations. Secretary General's office and the whole UN was the busiest because of the that year we had the SDGs and the climate change agreement, and 70th of the anniversary of creation of the United Nations, but also to celebrate the end of the Second World War. So his schedule was packed, and we were traveling everywhere to celebrate and work to make the SDGs and climate agreement possible, and also Addis Ababa of the action agenda. And early this year, the Secretary General Guterres, he announced of the UN 80 initiatives. And I thought naturally that it must be a series of the celebratory of the events, like because we had that many of the series of events throughout the year. But it was not about the celebration. It was about the adaptation and changes we need to do according to the global global changes we are facing right now, and political and systemic problems disruptions that's happening. As the Secretary General mentioned, is first a shift from shift toward multipolarity, and with declining coordination among member states, especially among the power of the groups, and intensifying global rivalries, not only in Europe, Africa, Asia, everywhere, and eroding of the public trust in multilateral institution. And there are distrust in the United Nations and other organizations, and also of the fourth, it is technological disruption, including AI and surveillance and the digital information. And also of the United Nations, I can tell you that United Nations and the system, as well as the NGOs, are the most hard hit by this the current situation. And because of global economies, of the economic uncertainties, and contributions from the donor countries, especially from the big countries, US and the European Unions are declining, and budget shortfalls. And as you saw in the media, it's not just what can be happening, but it is really happening right now. For example, World Food Program, WFP, was forced to cut food aid in Afghanistan, Syria, and Yemen. And UNHCR, which is the humanitarian office, scaled back shelter and education in East Africa and many different fields. And UNRWA in Gaza and Palestine, it almost ceased operation starting from this year, early this year. And WHO it delayed immunization drives and the health support in sub-Saharan Africa, and which is huge problems. And UNICEF also closed offices, and even the UN headquarters and many different agencies, they are thinking about relocating some personnel and reducing the numbers of the presence in the New York or Geneva, which is high cost. And of the UN initiative, of the UN 80 initiatives is bold but the urgent the efforts to make the United Nations and the system to make it fit for purpose of these years, because it has been for the past 80 years things have been changed, and of the expectation and the work of the United Nations has grown immensely and skyrocketing on the number of mandates. Now, the United Nations has 3,600 mandates that needs to be done and given by the member states. And it's the Secretary General and the Secretariat is starting to review the mandates and how best we can deal with this, and also make the organization more efficient and make more nimble and change and adapt to the changing world. So it is definitely difficult situation, and the path to those changes will be not easy, not only for the UN staff or the world, but also the NGOs on the ground. They are cut on many of the support from philanthropic of the society also, let alone the governments from the big the donors, and I think it is really important to continue this kind of multilateral efforts to deal with this current dire situation.
Thank you so much. Actually, the UNDP gave us figures saying that 300 million people in the poorest countries will need humanitarian aid to survive. And out of these 300 million, 200 million are children. So that's definitely a serious situation. But anyway, Julien, please, what's your view on that?
Yeah. Well, maybe just to start with the points that you mentioned about the skepticism of multilateralism, and to say that it's not new. I think we have seen from many countries, not just the United States, but we have seen from many countries moments with different governments come and go with a very strong rhetoric around the skepticism of multilateral institutions, of the UN, etc. But what is interesting is that there is also a difference, I think, sometimes between the rhetoric and the practice. Because the fact is that all governments actually need multilateral institutions, even when they have criticism of it, to advance some of their national priorities. As you said, everything is connected, and they need to be able to engage with the other countries, and the best place to do so is in these multilateral institutions. So, just to say that first, we need to also look a little bit at this aspect and kind of take a step back. Talking about UNESCO, we are in a particular situation because we already lived through a US withdrawal back in 2018.
You're right.
But they actually stopped paying to the UNESCO budget in 2011. So for more than 10 years, because they came back in 2023. Now we hope they will stay, but we will see. We will know soon.
So there's life after
yes.
the US,
and
right?
UNESCO survived. I mean, they were not easy times. There was a prioritization exercise. There was a rationalization exercise. I mean, just to give you a sense, the US contributed at the time approximately 20% of the organization's budget. So it's a big cut. But the organization has taken steps to make sure that the organization can continue to have an action. And another part that has been interesting is also that UNESCO actually has done a lot of steps to diversify funding. And whereas the budget used to be mostly from the fees that the member states pay, what we call the assessed contributions, now UNESCO, 55% of its budget is from what we call voluntary contributions. And 10% of these voluntary contributions actually come from the private sector, from philanthropy. 20% also come from multilateral banks, for example, IDB or the World Bank. So when we look now, again, same situation at the portion of the US contribution to the total budget of UNESCO, it's 8%. So from 20%, it went down to 8%. Of course, we hope to keep them in the organization also because it's important for the value of multilateralism to continue to have the US and every other member state in the organization. But just to say that there are also strategies to survive. Also, for UNESCO, it was a good kind of lesson to learn to do more with less. And there is a little bit, the usual rhetoric, the narrative is, the US, it's full of, the UN is full of bureaucrats, and they sit at their desk, they push paper around, they don't do much. But the truth is that actually, I've been in the UN for 20 years, and that has not at all been my impression of first my colleagues, but also the type of work that we do. And there was a recent study that showed that actually in terms of cost effectiveness, the US is much more cost effective, for example, in providing advice to governments than some of the big consultancies, McKinsey or the Boston Consulting Group, which sometimes governments use to provide them with advice on specific issues, because we have deep expertise, because we already have norms and standards. So just to finish, I won't repeat everything. I mean, obviously, UNESCO is also part of the UN 80 process, so I won't repeat what Wook Jin just said. But it's true that now there is a particular pressure because the scale of, as you explained, is so big. And that requires a fundamental rethinking of the development system and the humanitarian system. And that is not something that the UN can do alone. That is something that, first, the member states have to take responsibility for because they are the ones who created this system. And the secretariat, us in the organization, we can help make proposals, but ultimately the member states have to take decisions on what they want. But also the world has become much less member state focused. So the private sector, you gave good examples before, philanthropy, civil society, it's a process of rethinking that we have to do together. So it's not going to be easy, but sometimes, with pressure comes opportunity. With crisis come opportunities, right? So we hope it's also an opportunity to make the system more efficient and more resilient.
Thank you, Julien. Thank you, and that's the optimism that we believe in. Of course, Fernando, you're going to confirm that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I want to stress very practical things. Already before the Trump administration, the conference in Seville, raised high expectations. My personal impression, I've also been responsible for our contributions to all UN agencies as part of IFID. And I would go to Washington, G20, IMF, and to ECOSOC and New York. And there were like two different universes that weren't talking to each other. The G77, less and less was really impressed by the attention and by the focus of the richest economies. And they were aligned much more with United Nations and ECOSOC. And this was supposedly the opportunity to confirm the bet for multilateralism. It seems that we attract all kind of tsunamis, because if you remember, when we had the NATO summit in Madrid, it was going to be a regular summit, and then Russia invaded Ukraine. And now we are having in Sevilla this finance for development, and guess what has happened? Addis Abeba, if you have an opportunity, read the documents of Addis Abeba, the previous conference, the third conference 10 years ago. Everything, probably not gender or climate finance, but the rest is there. But there was no follow-up, absolutely no follow-up, no actions. They were talking about the famous sentence, from billions to trillions, and now it's going from billions to millions, really. And people are starting to talk about the 2040 agenda, because we are only 17% of the SDGs are on track, 17%. And so anyway, what can we do? First, and I had the expression because it's kind of linked to the Iraq war, we are trying to promote a coalition of the willing. The willing meaning foundations, agencies, banks that really still believe in international aid. And so as I see it, we are having a gathering, a meeting in Sevilla with a lot of agencies, development agencies from other countries. Second, we need a reform of the architecture of financial multilateral institutions. We need more money, but we need a more democratic governance. We need really, so that emerging economies identify with these institutions. But if they have no voting rights, it's very difficult to kind of move the gear in that direction. Third, precisely out of respect, we have to ask more from emerging economies, from local domestic systems. It doesn't make any sense, frankly, that some countries, I would not mention, Latin countries mostly, are buying half of real estate in Madrid, and they only have a pressure of a tax, they only paid 13% of the GDP. That's ridiculous. We have to help them, but we have to promote new fiscal tax systems that can really take care of the public goods and policies of their countries and prevent illicit fraud. Because at the end of the day, and we saw that with different United Nations studies, UNDP, people in Latin America are not trusting the system. That's why there's so much populism, because people don't pay taxes because they don't believe that those taxes are going to be rightly used, that there's corruption and the like. So good governance is important. Impact investment, catalytic capital. I'm going to pay copyrights from UNESCO, but I will use this because that's exactly what catalytic impact capital is all about. De-risking and mobilizing all this private. And we're going to have with a GSG, the International Association for Impact Investment, an event on that. Now, what is my question mark? Will the European Union be able to react? I think that we are still suffering in the EU. First, it was Brexit, then the pandemic, then the Ukrainian invasion, and trying to be optimistic. This is a wake-up call for the ideals of the European Union. And I'm not sure we are all completely aligned. It's very difficult. You talk about diversity, you know? And so clearly, I'm more optimistic. I think this is not the last chapter. It depends on the next tweet of President Trump every day, because then we have 180 tariffs, then back to 30. It's the problem. I've been with the OECD. The problem is that you cannot have a plan B if you don't know what the plan A is going to be. This guy is completely random, and it's very difficult to understand. But clearly, the markets, the real economy, they're going to be, and I hope the justice system, because the Democratic Party is not there and nobody waits for them. I don't know what they're doing, but clearly there will be a comeback. I don't think they're going to renounce to this 60 billion and to the soft power that goes with all the USAID. So I'm a little optimistic there. So to sum it up, we want not to have like a decaffeinated version that the US can be happy with. We would rather concentrate on mobilizing the partners that still believe like we do, and to have like a post-Sevilla action plan. Actually, the Spanish government came with a terrible name for that. It was Sevilla Action Platform, Platform Action. So it's SPA, which is terrible. But the after Sevilla will be, I believe, even more important than the Sevilla conference. Thank you.
Very good, Fernando. Àngel, so what's your view on that?
Thank you. It's hard to say how philanthropy will adapt or will evolve with all this uncertainty period of time. Among European foundations, there are a lot of discussions about how to pronounce and how to adapt to this situation. But we had a strong voice last week talking about how it will be the next movement in one philanthropic institution that was not the European, in that case.
The Vatican.
This one was the first one, but I'm going to comment the other one, that was Bill Gates' declaration last week.
1 million boys.
He said something interesting. But it was all something behind the highlights that I really would like to also to stress or to highlight. The first thing that he said is in the next 20 years, he will devote the double amount of money that he has spent in the last 20 years. That's important response. The other thing is that he is planning to close down Gate foundations by the 2045, inaugurating or promoting that idea of sunset foundations, foundations with a date of closing, because it's this is not the case that, for instance, the Caixa Foundation is planning. We are planning for the next generation and trying to have resources, capacities for the coming generation. But it's really interesting what he did. He also mentioned some very big words against U.S. administration, but the most important thing in the declaration was not highlighted in the media. That is, even the largest financial commitment from a foundation that probably can be the Gates Foundation said, for doing this in the next 10 years or next 20 years was the scope, we will have to work in cooperation with others. We cannot do it alone. So again, it's the same thing. For responding to this uncertainty, quick changes, no capacity to plan exactly, probably the recipe could be we cannot do it alone. We need alliances. We need to do it with other things. And it's something that even philanthropists need to learn. Let me say, I know a lot of foundations in Europe. They really would like not to be very public, because if we explain what we do, probably other grantees will ask me for more money. I don't want to manage that. So I think a new moment for philanthropy, we're trying to find partnership, real partnership, and real cooperation. We call it now trust philanthropy, so trying to reduce administrative burden, because the capacity of doing things is more related to the trust among partners. That kind of thoughts is that in the coming times we will see probably in the philanthropic work. And I think that is also connected with the idea of doing more things with governments and multilateral agencies.
Okay, look, we have such brilliant and bright speakers that they already covered the third block, okay, because actually we spoke about that. I think this is a very positive message, right? From the multilateralism to the governmental, implication, as well as the private sector, the civil society. Well, that's the recipe. That's the recipe. Now, what we have to do is to make sure that it's accomplished. But one thing, there's a lot of people in the world, millions of people in the world, that they're really fighting to get these things done. That when you have a crisis, when you have a problem, there's always a second side of that, which is an opportunity. And this is what we try to capture here. So we're going to do one thing. We will, because we have promised you 2 questions. We're going to take 2 questions, okay? All right. And after 2 questions, you'll be given 1 minute for one closing statement. What would you like to say in a minute as basically the concluding remarks of this interesting session? So please go ahead.
Yes. Thanks very much for this floor. It has been amazing. Thanks very much for your speaking. It has been very amazing and very nice. But I am aware about one question, and I ask all of you. I think what is happening is a lack of values, and I would like to ask you, what are we doing? What are we sharing with young people in the institutions? Because the future is what we are talking about is young people. What are we doing? What are you doing, especially United Nations and UNESCO?
Okay, so.
Okay. Well, I mean, obviously, UNESCO, we work a lot for youth and with youth, not just because the topics that we work on, starting with education, is especially relevant to young people, but also beyond education. So we have a youth program, actually, as part of our social and human sciences program, and it goes from a very diverse aspect, but it's basically about youth engagement in national institutions, democratic institutions. So it can go from freedom of expression, how we can help give a voice to young people, to, for example, young people in science. So we have, for example, programs in Africa for youth access to STEM education, scientific education. So it's a very wide range of things that we do. But I think one thing that is very important, well, two things I want to mention. One, first is that very interestingly, a lot of our youth programs are actually funded from the private sector. We recently signed a major program with Nestlé, which is really about empowering young people, giving them resources and giving them mentorship for them to solve a problem. In this case, we had chosen issues around biodiversity. And this is the thing, is that too often I think, older people, some of us still consider ourselves as young even though we're older, but older people think they should tell young people what to do. But actually, youth often has the solution. But the question is, how do you give them the tools, the resources, the knowledge, the access, the networks to develop their own solutions? So that's, for example, one large program that we have with this partner. So, yeah, I guess that's...
Okay, so, Jin, what do you have to say about youth in that respect?
I visited Spain many times, but this is my first time ever being with my family. My wife is here, and my daughter, Yeon, is here. And she, a couple of years ago, she talked to me, and she said that I'm not going to get married, and I'm not going to have a baby. So I thought maybe she was, it's a puberty, that age. So I assumed that it was about some hormonic thing. But she told me that look at the situation here, and especially the climate change. Maybe even if I get married, and even if I have my baby, when my baby grew up into my age, we never know how the world will be. Maybe because of the climate change, or the conflict, or World War III, or nuclear destruction. So I realized that for young generation, it is matter of the survival. For us, we can work, and carbon emission will be growing, but it will not be the matter of the death of the survival. But for them, it is reality. So I think it is important to engage them to work on the global issues, and it is one of the things the UN has been working with the UNESCO to educate them into global citizens, because I had numerous had the privilege to meet with many of the political leaders from all over the world, from the U.S. and African countries and everything. And at the end I realized that they are not well educated in global issues. They are focusing more on their domestic issues or personal issues. It's common. Whoever you talk to, they raise their national issues. So that is the reason we need to empower the young generation with this urgency and importance of the global issues and SDGs and things like that, because this is their own problem. And unfortunately, we have to do, our generation and of the your generation, we need to do more, but they need to work more on this, with the full support from the older generation, I think.
Perfect. Okay. So you know that there is a cocktail reception afterwards, and I think that at 8 o'clock we have to be finished. So let's take one question. Okay. All right. Let's do one thing. You both make the question. Okay. We combine the question, and there's a pledge that whoever responds in 1 minute. All right. So in 5 minutes we're out. Come on. Yeah. Please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Mark. I represent World Central Kitchen as a development advisor for Europe, and I have in fact 2 quick questions. One question is, what is your take in the obviously growth of influence and financial access of non-Western government actors and development financing players, such as, of course, China, the Asian Development Bank, and so forth, which very often doesn't come in the multilateralism discussions, surprisingly. And then what is also your take on what it seems to be a call for action, a growing call for action for commercial banking to support access to credit and financing in countries which don't fit the rating structures of commercial banking, and how can we really de-risk and mobilize more funding from pension funds and so forth to really the growing needs of especially vulnerable countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As we are almost off of time there, so that's a simple question. I have the question I will simplify, and that's how can you think in that double 4P collaboration, aid, especially intelligence can impact? Because we are in the verge of an era, of course, in which everything will change. All the process of change, of the goals of how do you think this will affect these 4P collaborations, private parties? Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, good. Look, we do one thing. You respond to the questions, and at the same time, within your response, you give your final statement. Okay, so
all in 1 minute.
So that will be your last opportunity to talk. Okay. Because otherwise we're going to miss the cocktail, and a lot of people want to just have a drink and before we go home. So, okay, what order you want to follow?
I'm ready.
Okay, you ready? But all of you.
I understand.
Yeah, that's fine. All of you will respond. Okay, with the final statement. Please, Fernando, go ahead.
Okay, first, the sentence for the posterity would be development from a logic of donation to a logic of partnership. That's what I wanted to kind of lay there. Second, the double question of China and other players. It's interesting because I see that there is a rapprochement, they're converging. Interestingly enough, the European Union is getting more Chinese in the sense that they're looking more into their own interests, economic interests. And China, they're running out of money and they're starting to, and they want to be civilized. Actually, when Vance and the Chancellor of China went to Munich, I thought they had exchanged the speeches because the Chinese were talking about multipolarism and multilateralism, and the other one, Vance, no? So that's one thing. I think things are converging. I don't think, and we need to talk. We need to work together and not to demonize this Chinese or these others, because we all have our list of things that are not doing correctly. Second, and very importantly, we need much less risk averse in the public organizations. The rating institutions believe Africa is a country, and there's no rating, and actually more and more we should put a lot, and you guys should put a lot of emphasis on multilaterals to risk more, to become more a laboratory, because as a factory I said the figures. We are just a drop in the oceans. But if we are able to really prove that Africa actually, last thing, Africa's projects, actually the big projects in Africa perform better than in other regions. The problem is that only 15% of the projects that are designed in Africa see the end of the tunnel. So 85% are not done. But when they are done, there are multiple opportunities for business and a thriving economy in Africa.
Àngel, do you want to continue with the response?
I'm just thinking that I can echo and take some words from another person. I was thinking when 3 years ago Javier Solana closed the Filea meeting here in Barcelona, in front of 800 people coming from philanthropy, he pledged us. More or less was like that. Mr. Solana said, I spent all my career trying to build Europe from the institutions. You guys, the philanthropists or people working in philanthropies, you have the opportunity to build Europe from the society. And that was a big message that also can leave it here. Thank you.
Very good, very inspiring. Please, go ahead.
Yeah, no, thank you. So, I mean, maybe to answer the three questions in one go, even though they're quite different, I think for me, the question is more, what are the values and the standards that are at the center? Whether you're talking about engaging non-traditional donors and some specific interests that may be part of their, growth and engagement, but frankly speaking, even the traditional donors also come with their interests. So, we see that very often in the UN. Or when you look at the greater role that the private sector, and particularly the financial sector, is taking, and the interest it's taking in development, in climate, in biodiversity, etc. Or when you look at the 4 Ps and how it all works together, for it to work, you need to have solid standards and metrics. And this is what I think organizations like UNESCO or the UN more broadly can do. Because we have the norms and the standards, we have the expertise, we have the global reach, we're present in, as the UN almost in every country. So, that helps channel these intentions, how good intentioned or bad intentioned everybody can judge, but these intentions in the right way and to have positive results. So, for me, this is why it's so important to continue to invest in these norms, in these standards, in this global shared expertise that everybody can benefit from. And maybe to end, for me, the kind of takeaway of the world, the geopolitical, as you had in your title, moment we're in, is really the issue of building trust. It's very difficult when you have a lot of divisive voices, but actually there is a community of engaged actors from development, from the human rights community, from humanitarians, that actually, from youth, you were asking about youth, actually youth is very committed to climate issues, to human rights. They want to do things, I mean, we always generalize, but they want to do things. But there is a lack of trust between institutions. There is a lack of trust from philanthropy towards the UN. There is a lack of trust from the UN to the private sector. There is a lack of trust between governments. So the solution for me, I mean, the solution is easy said, but the key is how are we going to build this trust? And how are we going to start complementing each other a little bit more instead of all trying to compete with each other or trying to all do the same thing? So, building trust.
No, very good, very good. Thank you. Jin, so you have the closing words.
First, I totally agree with Julien on the trust. And about the skepticism of even when the UN was functioning, we were asked why the UN exists, because it is not functioning well. And at the time, the Secretary General's answer was always the same. think about the world without the United Nations. And he said the UN was originally created not to bring the humankind into the heaven, but to prevent them fall into the hell. So, which means that it is not enough, but we need your full trust on the work of the United Nations and belief in the multilateralism, because without it, each country, especially the underdeveloped countries, they need to survive by themselves, which is not sustainable. And about the 4 Ps of the in SDGs world, we also say 4 Ps, which is people, prosperity, and the planet, and finally partnership. I think this partnership is the most important and one of the takeaway we can take from this discussion, because now we reach the point that only governments or only NGOs or only the philanthropic community can resolve the issue. We need partnership to deal with the global issues. Otherwise, my daughter Yewon will never get married and have a child.
Okay. So that's it. Let me say that goes for you, not for you. All right. So if now you feel a little bit more, let's say, optimistic, a little bit more, you have a little bit more of hope in the world's institutions and people like you that fight to get a better place. If you feel a little bit more, we accomplished our goal. Okay, so let's hope so. We're gonna go out now for a cocktail, and we have some time to just speak and discuss and at least to say hello. Thank you so much for coming.